It's over 9,000!
Welcome, Super Elite Warriors, to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelli, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time, and I am joined, as always, by my new recruit co-host.
This is the Bekinney, and join us as we uncover the cultural inspirations and hidden history behind Akira Toriyama's seminal franchise. And also stick with us as we surely are ripped apart by the odd gravity fluxes on this planet.
Watch your tone, recruit.
Do you have something against me telling our listeners that we're alternately floating and experiencing 20 times normal gravity?
No, I have a problem with your tone. It's far too aggressive. The planet's gravity wells are responding to the vibrations. Something to add?
Well, I feel like if my voice alone can cause a planet's gravity to fluctuate, then maybe the planet isn't very stable and we should just get out of here.
You'd think so, but that's why you're still just a recruit.
Okay. Enlighten me.
A planet where gravity can be controlled by the vibrations of sound. Imagine unlocking those secrets. We could provide stability to any planet in any galaxy if we could control its gravitational fields.
I feel like we could also destabilize any planet we want, which makes it a pretty powerful weapon.
Now you're getting it.
It seems wrong.
It might seem wrong, but if that power exists, shouldn't it exist under the sole authority of the Frieza Force?
I suppose if that power is out there, it's better to have it in the hands of responsible parties and not just situated within reach of a mad despot whose lust for power is only matched by his cruelty.
Exactly why we should secure it for Lord Frieza.
Hard to argue with that logic. So where do we start looking for some kind of source to all this?
I'm getting some interesting readings on thermofilters on my scouter. See that over there?
Hang on, let me switch to thermal. Whoa! That area over there is a deep shade of red I've never seen before.
That's where we're heading.
Into certain death. Got it.
That's not fair. At least we can pick our way around the gravity pockets using thermal maps. The fluctuations in gravity come with changes in temperature too, it seems. We just pick a zone and stick with it.
At least we'll safely arrive to the point of certain death. Great.
With that bit of optimism, as we trek across the surface of Luton, let's get into this week's topic. And this week we're tackling another 5 episodes of the Dragon Ball Z anime. We'll be getting into, it's like episodes then 11 through...
11 through 15?
15, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Starting off with episode 11, titled Terror on Arlia. So for the past few episodes, we've been following the progression of the Sea Warriors in their preparations to take on the coming Saiyans. Gohan's improved his survival skills, and in fact, I'd say he's even thriving. But what are the Saiyans doing? It looks like they're making a pit stop, and it's a convenient scene to learn their names, Vegeta and Nappa. They stop off on the planet Arlia, which appears to be home to some giant bug people. Thanks to Vegeta's telepathy, which never ever comes up ever again, the Saiyans surrender to local forces without putting up much of a fight. The bug people essentially Trojan horse themselves by putting the Saiyans in the same jail cell as their political dissidents, where Atla, I presume their leader, complains about his wife being stolen. It seems the guy running the place, Moai, is a brutal dictator that's reinstated Prima Nocta. He also feeds subordinates to an even bigger bug person in his dungeon. His stolen bride, Lemuria, seems very unhappy with this whole arrangement, and I can kind of understand why. Unfortunately for the Arlians, their B-plot doesn't matter now that the Saiyans have escaped. The Saiyans amuse themselves by playing along with Moai's shtick, then wipe out his army and his basement dweller. The dictator gets toppled, and our lost loves reunite. The Saiyans leave those crazy kids alive for some... Oh, no, wait. Never mind. They just blew up the planet from low orbit. I wonder if that scene of Vegeta and Nappa talking in the abyss of space will be important down the road at all. Probably not. Moving on to episode 12, titled Global Training. At this point, we're 3 months into the year until the Saiyans arrive. 3 months of training for our heroes, and everyone's been making progress. If they can keep this pace up, surely those new Saiyans won't be a problem. Gohan has become the apex predator of his little mountain hideaway and feels confident about making his way home. Meanwhile, Bulma and Krillin have been on the hunt for Tien and Chaozu. Back on Snake Way, Goku's been running his ass off when he finally meets someone on the road, a street sweeper. The driver tells Goku he's about a quarter of the way there, and then offers to let Goku rest on the back of the sweeper while he, drives down the road. We get a little training montage of Tien holding back a waterfall with his, telepathy, while Piccolo does the same with one of the Great Pyramids, until he drops it and unleashes utter devastation. I guess he dropped it into the world's biggest sinkhole, or I don't know, everyone was all training in the same square mile area. Anyway, the devastation has a silver lining. Bulma finds Tien thanks to the scouter. Looks like a slight training setback has worked out in her hero's favor. Speaking of training setbacks, it would appear sleeping on the back of a street sweeper is a bad idea. During his rest, Goku falls from Snake Way and through the clouds into Hiffle. Which brings us to episode 13, titled Goz and Mez. So Goku fell off of Snake Way and got KO'd and Hiffled. Who knocked him out? Well, Goz and Mez, of course. Why? Because Goku was trying to steal the fruit of the Inseju, or Tree of Circular Life. Why is that forbidden? Because they belong to King Yama, and he's the only one allowed to eat them. Well, after being denied his snack, Goku inquires as to which of them is Kaio-sama. Bad news, Goku. It looks like you've taken an unexpected detour. So how does Goku get back on track? I guess we'll have to wait a minute as we switch back to the land of the living, where Tien, Chaozu, and Lunch are at Korin's tower. The boys are climbing, and Lunch is committing robbery and attempted murder, and probably a few weapons charges. We get to catch up with Upa and Bora a little bit as they eject a home invader, and kind of get this nice little character moment where we see Upa's kind of grown up a little bit, and he's become a man, essentially. Back in Hiffle, the Guardian Demons divide and conquer to tackle their mountain of paperwork and torturing Goku. The torturing doesn't really pan out, so Goz ups the stakes with a wager on a sumo match for Goku's soul. If Goku wins, he gets an opportunity to escape and get back to Snake Way. I think we know how this goes. The escape pad is a giant seesaw, and Goku is the little brother. Goku, aka Rocket Man, doesn't get far, however. Good thing he's got a thick skull. Despite seeing the truth in all things, Goku needs a few more tries before it sinks in, trying to get back up through the clouds. At this point, Mez steps in with his own offer. He will tell Goku how to actually escape if Goku can catch him in a game of one-on-one tag. But ultimately, yeah, we know how this is going to end. And we see that he also pockets one of the fruits without those guys finding out. So it's a win-win for him. He gets his snack and he gets out. Oh, but what's this? The stairway out of hell, or I guess is it heaven? I'm not sure. Pops out of Yama's desk. Looks like Goku is starting back from square one, which brings us to episode 14, entitled Princess Snake. So Goku's finally back on Snake Way, but he's had to start over. 3 months of time wiped out in an instant. But he should be okay now, right? I mean, he ate the fruit of the Inseju, so he shouldn't get hungry. It's supposed to keep him full for 100 days, and it's supposed to boost his strength. So now he's laser focused on his goal. There's no way he'll get sidetracked now. Until he gets eaten by a giant snake pretending to be a house. He ends up in the keep of a bunch of snake women and their princess, Princess Snake. She's quite taken with Goku, but Goku seems to think she's Kaio-sama. She offers to dance a tango, and Goku just thinks it's some sort of weird training. He eventually body slams the princess, learns that she is not, in fact, Kaio-sama, then tries to bounce without so much as an apology. He's actually quite rude when he goes to try and leave, which is pretty funny. But ever the consummate host, Princess Snake offers him dinner. Goku accepts, despite, eating a piece of fruit that was supposed to keep him full for 100 days. The ladies pull out all the stops, even put tranquilizers in the food. Next up is a bath, because cleanliness is next to Kaio-sama-ness. Next up is a rousing game of Russian roulette. What? Followed by a swords dance. Goku gets dosed with more tranks, and they finally kick in. Goku has a few nightmares of his family being murdered, while the Snake Ladies prepare to feast on him. Or they would if the tranquilizers didn't almost immediately wear off. So the princess reveals that Goku actually was eaten by a snake, and he's been in its belly the whole time. Well, Goku flies out of the snake's mouth and tries to leave peacefully, but she's not having it, so she decides to give him chase. Ultimately, this just ends up with her tied up in knots. Which brings us to our last episode this week, episode 15, Dueling Piccolos. This is a short one. Piccolo fights himself, Gohan walks on a beach, climbs a mountain, then builds a boat. When he goes sailing, a storm rolls in, and Gohan remembers he can't swim. And that's it.
I kind of dig all of these episodes, actually.
They're not bad. As far as, like, especially when you compare it to, like, the training arcs, like, on Kami's Lookout with Goku and stuff like that, I feel like they're a little bit more entertaining to watch. Especially, like, the Snake Way stuff is kind of a fun way to show time progressing. And then you have these, and this is the other thing is like I kind of skip over some stuff obviously when I do these reviews, but we constantly get little snippets, cutbacks to different places of stuff happening. So while you're watching Goku try to progress, you're also kind of getting small updates on what everyone else is doing, and it's really well done. I think the pacing's pretty good, and I don't think it overstays its welcome too much.
No, I think they're, like, really, really entertaining episodes. There's some crazy dream logic stuff going on, especially in the Princess Snake episode. Goku shows up at this place, rolls with the punches on a dance, tries to leave, and they try to get him to stay by teaching him Russian roulette.
Yeah.
Like, what?
And that didn't make it into Cartoon Network.
And then it's revealed that the entire time he's been inside of a snake. Like, that is crazy dream logic right there.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
That is insane, insane stuff right there. It's like, first of all, I've had dreams legitimately like that, where I've legitimately had dreams where I've been in a place and thought I was partying and then turned around and realized I was, like, in hell or something.
Oh, that's dark.
There's an episode of Love, Death, and Robots that's super duper like that. If you've ever seen that series, there's an episode where a character wakes up, he finds himself like in a way station, like beyond the edge of their known galaxy or something, but but there's like people around there that he recognizes from his past, and he hangs out with them and everything, and then it turns out that he has actually, spoilers for an episode of Love, Death, and Robots. You want to tap that fast forward 30 seconds button a few times. But this is like a 5-year-old episode of a show that's on Netflix that everyone forgot existed. But he turns out that he has wound up in like the nest of like a space spider or something that's like feasting on his emotions or whatever. And it's been like pumping these joyful things into him.
Neat.
And the full implications of it are grotesque. But yeah, I love that episode though. I really like. I think it's wild.
That one's pretty. I also like the Goz and Mez episode.
Oh yeah. That's like
just slapstick fun.
That one is. It's also so filled with like some really cool cultural references that we're going to get into and talk about, and like even little things that I don't have notes on actually, but like just how it's built around sort of these general ideas of the afterlife in Buddhist culture, where your soul goes to hell to become purified, and as it's becoming purified, it's becoming less you, and it's becoming like a blank soul, and once all of its bad karma is used up, you actually that's when you get reincarnated. Okay. You don't remember your past self because it's been purified through the actions of hell. And that's when you see, anytime in the afterlife you see all those little floating cloud puffs floating around. It's like those are souls that are about ready to go back and into reincarnation.
Cool. I didn't know that.
It's like that's like sort of kind of the general inspiration point. Then, like, I think I forgot to put anything in our notes specifically, but I did read, like, some stuff about, like, the River of Blood or the Lake of Blood that appears.
Yeah.
I mean, super similar concept to, like, the River Styx. Just exists in like, Buddhist culture and Eastern Asian culture. There's, like, a river, I think it's called, like, the Sanzu River or something like that exists in the underworld. That's a River of Blood. Very similar concept to River Styx, is that only in Inferno?
No, I think it's general,
like
Greek mythology. Yeah,
yeah. And there's also in Inferno, there's like a river of blood that is boiling hot that people who are tortured have to keep. I forget what it's on. I think the 7th layer of hell, and depending on the level of that sin, which I forget what that sin was, your body must be immersed in this boiling river of blood to a certain level.
Oh.
If you were really, really bad, your like whole body has to be immersed in this boiling river of blood. If you were only so bad, it has to be like up to your knees, etc.
I get you.
And if you try and pull your body parts out because you can't stand the pain, a demon shoots you with a flaming arrow.
Well, that's a real lose-lose situation right there.
So yes. But no, like these episodes are just so entertaining. There's so much stuff in them, and
it also helps that like we get a bump in animation quality too with these episodes.
Even an episode like Dueling Piccolos, which is pretty light on plot and pretty light on anything culturally relevant worth looking into, right? I mean, it just feels a lot similar to like Goku fighting Goku's doll, essentially.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, like the kick in animation quality and the like kind of gross body horror-ness of Piccolo splitting in two and then reabsorbing himself. That alone is just entertaining.
Agreed.
So talking about some of the things that we discovered in this, Goz and Mez, or Goz and Mez, we mentioned in our previous episode, the very most recent one, that two of the attendants who work for Yama, which is the Chinese version of Enma, who inspired King Yema, are Oxhead and Horseface. In Chinese, these names are Gozu and Mezu, or Goz and Mez. This is also why Goz's test is of strength when he has to, do a sumo match against Goku, and Mez's is of speed. Oxen are strong, laborious creatures, while horses are swift. These two beings appear in Journey to the West, where Sun Wukong overpowers them after being dragged down to hell in his sleep.
Oh.
Sound familiar?
Wonder if that was intentional.
Yeah. Also in this episode, I found there's that part where they're like, come on, everyone, let's go climb the Mountain of Needles, right?
Yeah.
That is a typical feature of hell in Buddhist mythology, is either needles or knives or some sort of sharp, pokey object that is in one of the courts of hell. We talked about like the 8 or 10 or 18 courts of hell that they have. That is one of the punishments / purifications for souls in hell, is they have to climb a mountain of spiky objects.
I see that gives me that scene in one of the Saw movies where there's like a pit of hypodermic needles.
Yeah.
That's what it makes me feel like.
That's Saw 2.
Is it Saw 2? Okay.
Yeah. One time I watched, at the time I think there were 6 Saw movies. There might have been 7. I watched them all together on the same screen.
Wait, like running simultaneously?
Yes.
Oh, why?
That was a thing I used to do on an old podcast that I used to run. Is for Halloween every year, we would pick a franchise and we would do a watch of that franchise in its entirety all at the same time. We did Saw, we did Evil Dead, and I forget the other one. We did 3.
My ADD could not.
It really was just, let's talk about these movies, and then occasionally, it was like, let's just talk about this franchise, and then occasionally we'd be like, oh, look, these 5 of these 6 movies are all doing the same thing right now. Isn't that crazy?
That's pretty good.
Moving on to Princess Snake. It's pretty easy to think that Princess Snake was inspired by a Nuri Onna, which is a yokai said to have the body of a reptile, most often a snake, and the head of a woman. However, if you look into yokai a little bit more, you will come across the Uwabami, I think is how I would pronounce it, which is a much closer inspiration point. And Uwabami is a giant snake that looks like a normal snake, but is most notable for having a voracious appetite and can shapeshift into other beings, including humans. They ambush travelers while they're on their hikes and such, and they must be outsmarted rather than outfought. Sound familiar?
A little bit, yeah.
Snakes themselves have been a part of Japanese mythology since the earliest times and are symbols of life and death and eternal youth. The shedding and regrowing of their skin is viewed as a magical ability, and they can slip into the tiniest cracks. They can penetrate deep, dark places that are inaccessible to humans, and because of all these traits, snakes have long been considered to be kami or yokai. And there's some really cool stories that like inspired the creation of the Uwabami. One of them had to do with, I can't remember all of the names and places and everything specifically, but it had to do with this snake being that transformed into a man because he was taken with a girl who was like a princess and went to go ask for her hand. And the king was like, I ain't going to let my daughter marry no non-human. And so he's like, how about this, Mr. Snake? I'm going to challenge you to a race around my compound. And if you can beat me, you can have my daughter's hand. And he has his attendants set up various booby traps along the route and tell him where they are so that the king avoids them all. The snake gets hit by them all, and it's presumed that the snake is going to die. He doesn't die, but everyone thinks he did, and then he's pissed. And so he gets like revenge and like floods the lands and all this stuff. And the princess, seeing the flooded lands, realizes that the only way to stop this is to appease the snake, and she goes out to talk to him, and she drowns. And the snake, realizing what he has done, recedes the waters and goes back to... It's like nobody wins.
Yeah, no kidding. Jeez. All right, well, we've heard about snake murderers, so what about Snake Way? Well, it's fairly unlikely an inspiration point. However, for the sake of being thorough, in Nezu, a neighborhood in Tokyo, there's a street called Ebimichi, or Snake Street, over top the former Aizen stream. Aizen is derived from the Buddhist deity Aizen Myo, which is the Japanese translation of the deity Ragaraja. He's a wisdom deity portrayed as a red-skinned man with flaming wild hair representing rage, lust, and passion. In Japan, he became popular as, legend says, a Shingon priest used magical chants and rituals in the name of Aizen Myo to call up the typhoons that saved Japan from the Mongol fleets led by Kublai Khan. These divine windstorms became known as kamikaze, thus lending the name to the pilots in World War II. Interestingly, he's become known as a patron and symbol of homosexuality in Japan, as Ragaraja patrons were historically noted to have male-on-male intimate sexual relations. Does this have literally anything to do with Dragon Ball? You tell us. Note that all of the Oni working in the afterlife appear to be male. Just throwing that out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Snake Street in Nezu has been mentioned in Sanshiro, the first novel in a trilogy about a man from Kyushu arriving in Tokyo, authored by Natsume Soseki. Soseki? I think it's Soseki. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A famous Japanese novelist. It also runs through Yanaka, where more history can be found about the time before the street was built, when the river formed a border between the Hongo War and the Shitaya district in Tokyo. It's a place where many brothels popped up due to the less than usual amount of law enforcement required to maintain order along a border as strong as a river. So during this time, it became known to be something of a garbage bin, collecting the offcasts of drunkards looking for a good time among the brothels, and a river prone to flooding, which also played a part in some of its history in the Shogunate Wars. In 1920, when the river was enclosed and Snake Street was built atop its former waterway. The street is important in that it leads to Nezu Shrine, where an annual Azalea Festival takes place. Nezu Shrine is one of the oldest places of worship in Tokyo, built during the reign of Emperor Yamato Takeru. Very famous for its Torii Gate Tunnel, which you might have seen pictures of before. It's very distinct. There's like these red arches in series, like going through a forest, which is somewhat similar to that of the Fushimi Inari Taisha in Kyoto. Torii gates mark the transition from the mundane to the sacred, a spot where kami are welcomed and thought to travel through. Torii gates were likely an imported tradition from India and Buddhist ideas, but their additional aspect of drawing in birds, an animal often associated with the travel of spirits and the dead, may also have something to do with their establishment at places considered spiritual pathways. Bringing things back to Dragon Ball, consider that Snake Way is the pathway from the realm of the afterlife to King Kai's planet. It is beset with many dangers and temptations, but ultimately leads to a place of spiritual importance within the dragon world. Though one can doubt whether Snake Street held any inspiration for Akira Toriyama, the parallels are pretty interesting.
I think so. And there's some additional symbolism and imagery used along the way as well. In Taoism and Shintoism, hold that there's this path of enlightenment that they follow. These concepts are known as the sacred path, the path within us, and the yellow path. And they're all bubbling at the surface of Eastern religion and mythology, used to describe the means towards harmony with the Tao or enlightenment with the Buddha. It's a spiritual journey depicted most often as a metaphysical path that individuals must traverse. Toriyama makes it a physical path. Goku must travel along a long and winding road, literally, in order to train with a being known as King Kai, a person whom even God himself reveres. Briefly, I think we'll get into King Kai in our next episode, but King Kai, just like the Kai in it, because he's Kai-O-sama in Japanese, and the O is king, and Sama just means like Lord, like it's one of those
honorifics?
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. It's one of those honorifics that Japanese you use when someone is your superior, and the Kai portion means like of worlds or like world. So he's the Lord of worlds. He's the Lord of all worlds. And yes, that gets retconned later to being he's just the Lord of the worlds of what? Is he the North Kai?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's North.
Yeah. But he's the Lord of worlds. As opposed to then there's much later on we have Shinkai-O, which is the Supreme Kai, and he is the Lord of Lords. So,
Lord of Lords of the planets.
Yes. So think of how all this builds on everything that Goku has undergone thus far. He travels across an ocean to meet Kame-Sennin in order to train. Then he climbs Korin Tower in order to achieve his next level, and that takes several days. Then he must traverse upward further in order to train with Kami. Each time he travels further, meets an even greater master, and achieves a new level of heretofore unimagined strength. Now he's set to travel a previously unimaginable distance. They say it's like 1,000,000 miles.
Yeah, 1,000,000, I believe, is the number right on the nose.
To train with the previously unimaginable Lord of Worlds. So it's just upping the stakes, yes, but it's Toriyama, again, playing into the traditions that he has established within Dragon Ball. This is why watching the Dragon Ball portion of the story is important.
Yeah.
Falling off Snake Way, being punished by traveling to hell forever, seems perhaps excessive, but remember that the afterlife in Eastern culture is considered very bureaucratic. These types of rules sit in place simply to maintain order and are another level and layer of the bureaucracy. This also helps explain why they don't strictly apply. Why, yes, you fall off and you're trapped forever, but not really. You just then get out via those stairs over there. Much like the rules of regular life and our bureaucracy, these rules can be sidestepped or even outright broken. On top of that, the concepts of the various paths in East Asian mythology hold that the journey is as important as the destination. Yes, the end goal is to reach King Kai, and that will be a test of Goku's strength and character, but the path to King Kai is no less important, and there are serious consequences for losing sight of that. And that also is important because, yes, we are talking here about the various times Goku kind of strays from the path, but in the manga, he never does. In the manga, he just goes to King Kai, but they do specifically mention that if you fall off, you will go to hell forever. So again, it's like that, why mention it if it never happens? Because the path is as important as the destination. Also
Makes
consider
sense.
the appearance of Snake Way. It's a gray path along a field of yellow clouds. This is interesting as these mythologies all mention a yellow path, and yellow is an interesting color in Chinese culture with many meanings, including power and authority as the color of the emperor in China. I think we've mentioned even in the past that these colors associated with the emperor of the lands are like forbidden for use outside of official context. If you use the emperor's color outside of making something specifically for the emperor, you could be punished. Yellow is associated with good luck and neutrality, freedom from worldly cares, heroism, and the Yellow River is the cradle of Chinese civilization, traditionally having been believed to flow from heaven itself. So Toriyama takes what a viewer might expect in this context, with the path being yellow, and inverts it. He does the opposite. The path is unassuming and gray. To fall off is to plunge into yellow.
However, also playing on this is the Han Dynasty. The Yellow Springs became synonymous with the underworld. Much of traditional ancient Chinese religion has been rewritten by Confucianists who ridiculed these ancient myths, but the Yellow Springs were not hell so much as they were like a place where the soul would reside after passing. And under the influence of Buddhism, the concept changed until it included a place of subterranean torment called Diyu. In Diyu, the souls of the dead undergo judgment in 10 courts of hell, or as we discussed in the King Yema episode, 8 courts. Or 18. We're not really sure. These courts are associated with different aspects of atonement and punishment meant to purify the soul until it is summoned to appear before Lord Jue, who decides the manner of one's next existence. The soul is then administered the tea of oblivion by Mother Meng, erasing their memory to be ready to be reborn. Spirits that are pure and do not need to go through the 10 courts of hell for purification are given access to either the silver bridge that yields access to a position in the celestial bureaucracy, or the golden bridge that yields rebirth in an upper heavenly realm. The cycle of reincarnation is important to keep in mind for Dragon Ball as it comes into play later on. Say when a certain character known for his pride asks if he can expect to meet a certain clown in the afterlife, but is told that such a privilege will not be granted to him. There's some play on this happening with Snake Way as well. Falling off into the yellow clouds sends one to hell, but it is a gray and silver bridge. But it leads not to the bureaucracy, but instead to the upper realm of training with King Kai.
Yeah, so it's all, I mean, they're playing with well-known...
A few different things and sort of
tropes.
mishmashing stuff together.
Right, yeah. And yeah, like, exactly. Because that's where this becomes important. Because, a lot of what happens in a lot of filler in Dragon Ball gets kind of confused with things that happen then later on. People are like, oh, why would Vegeta care if he gets sent to hell? Because he could just be in hell, right? Like all the rest of the...
But if being in hell is losing who you were, there's no way a man with that much pride would want that fate.
Right. And then yes, it's also like the idea that eventually, being in hell, you will be wiped out of who you are and reincarnated as someone else. So there's... that's also where I think these limits on the dragon's abilities to wish people back kind of comes from. Is... It's also arbitrary.
Well, yeah, because it's Dragon Ball.
Right.
Everything's arbitrary.
But even like everything, like even the amount of time one is supposed to spend in hell or heaven even is all arbitrary. Like it's based on the level of good or bad that you were. So like, and I don't know exactly. I'm not. Please do not hold me to numbers here. But let's say you just lived a pretty normal life, but in general, you probably weren't a great person. You just generally were judgmental of people. You never really helped anyone else out. All right, you were just kind of selfish, but not like not like to the extent that you're harming other people. You're just never helping anyone. You may go to hell in Buddhism, but like, I don't know, you're going to be like slapped around a little bit. You spend like a month or two. It's like going to jail for a few months, and then you get reincarnated. You get to try again.
It's almost like the demons are just like unhappy with punishing people like that.
Yeah,
they're like, no, we want the really bad guys. You get out of here.
And then yeah, let's say you were really bad. Let's say you're a serial killer. You're gonna be punished for a long, long time. But eventually, you'll be given this tea of oblivion and reincarnated. And the same concept actually holds true for heaven. Unless you are granted access into the bureaucracy of the afterlife and given a position among the immortals, your time in paradise is based on how much good karma you built up.
Oh, that's interesting.
And once you have exhausted that supply of good karma, you also are brought back in front of Lord Jue, or Zhu, or however it's pronounced, and you are also given the tea of oblivion and reincarnated. And the idea then is, you bring these souls back, and you're like, hey, this one's fresh out of, a month in hell. And he's like, yeah, send him back as just a normal dude again. And hey, this one's fresh out of like 55,000 years in hell. He's like, ooh, send that one back as like a rat.
I like to think of that version of heaven as like, it's like the trial period. And then it's like, oh, you've run out of karma. You need to go back and farm some more.
And then yeah, like if you've oh, hey, this guy just got done in 2 years of heaven. Oh, send him back to like a upper class family. Oh,
Let's
this
give him
one
a
got
cushy
back.
Life.
This one's back from 55,000 years of heaven. Oh, make that dude the emperor when he's reincarnated. That's sort of what is believed or told to people. We'll continue pointing out here as we're kind of wrapping up that a lot of the symbolism we're striving for is shaky, as diagrams of Dragon Ball's afterlife, as drawn by Toriyama himself, explicitly include a heaven, which is actually at the uppermost portion of the diagram and not at all along Snake Way. But one wonders if Toriyama considered any of this when initially making up the idea of Snake Way and King Kai and Goku's afterlife training. I kind of doubt it.
The man's drawing maps that are inaccurate based on things that he's already done. So I'm going to go with no, I don't think he thought about that. And
it's funny because like he really ultimately would think about a lot of this stuff. That's where a lot of the stuff that's in Sandland, especially like the Sandland season 2, and now appearing in, or most recently having appeared in Dragon Ball Daima, is kind of like coming from, is Toriyama would just like sit and like, even though he wasn't working anymore, he would just like sit and think about like the mythology of, like, he's a lore nerd.
I feel that. I am also a lore nerd.
I'm not. I think we've like, I think that makes us a pretty good balance, actually. But I think we've talked about that before. Like, I do not care how much Toriyama like conflicts his own lore, and I don't even attempt to rationalize it all. I'm as long as he's entertaining me and staying true to the characters, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I'm the same way when it comes to Dragon Ball, mostly because after so many retcons and back and forths on things, you kind of just have to go, it's Dragon Ball. It's not perfect. We're just trying to piece together what we can.
There's also the possibility that Snake Way is like at least visually somewhat based off of the Great Wall of China.
I could see that. There. Yeah.
It's very somewhat strikingly similar. I mean, that's, you're just playing off of things that are around you. Again, this is, I think I know I've said this like in the panels that we've done on like, at conventions on filler. You know, I've pointed out a lot of these things, or the panels that we've done on the movies too, like where we've pointed out a lot of these references and things. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's, I don't know what the word is here. Like, I don't think it's as crass, I guess, as them cramming in references to things. I don't think that's what they're doing. This isn't a modern day blockbuster movie where they're crassly trying to make you remember a thing that you recognize from somewhere else so that you can clap in a movie theater.
Yes, the Easter egg thing.
This is them being inspired by things that are innate to their culture, that are just part of who they are. Again, I feel like we've talked about this before, but I just think it's always worth occasionally bringing up. Like, in the West, you might make a snake like the bad, like, or someone with snake-like features the bad guy. You might describe someone who's nefarious as having like snake-like features. That all stems,
maybe an evil wizard from a very popular series of books.
Potentially. That all stems from the Bible. Even if you're not a religious person and you don't go to church, you have been unknowingly influenced by the story of the snake tempting Adam and Eve.
Yeah, sure.
And that has, through millennia, filtered its way down to you. That's what, like, a lot of this stuff that appears in Dragon Ball is, with Snake Way.
Absolutely. Toriyama
probably knew nothing about the 18 Courts of Hell, and, I mean, especially because that's all filler. But he probably didn't really know anything about the Yellow Path, or, you know, the importance of the way, or anything. He wasn't a Buddhist. He wasn't a Taoist. He wasn't a Shintoist scholar. He wasn't a scholar at all. But that stuff permeates through the culture in such a way that it makes its way to him somehow.
Agreed.
And that's what he's playing with. He's playing with just things that he recognizes and he's not even doing it necessarily consciously. Again, you might just make a snake-like or a weasel-like or a rat-like person. And that's all coming from somewhere in our history. The rats with the plague. You never had the plague.
I don't think I've ever even known anybody that's had the plague. Or heard of anyone that's had the plague.
But rats were considered the carriers of the plague, and so then now we think of rats as being like nasty and dirty.
Sure.
They also kind of freaking are.
Just the ones in the wild. For those of you at home that have rats as pets, they're wonderful little pets.
Don't
feel bad.
Yes.
I'm talking
about the ones that the cat brings home.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Mostly because they're probably half gnawed on already.
Yeah.
I also think that in parallel to what you just described, I also think that the culture of manga itself is part of why he does this. Because each week he's got to come up with a new chapter. There's only so many panels that he has. And I think him using this sort of cultural shorthand like this is a way for him to try and give the reader as much information as possible without having to like explicitly put it in dialogue.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's almost a place where the anime could pad out its filler even more. I'm glad they don't, but like you could have that the Goz and Mez episode could span 2 episodes, because you could sit and explain to the viewers that like, oh, Goz is super strong, and all of the you know, things that have like you could equate him so much more explicitly with an ox head, and sure. Then you could do it with Mez also. You could so much more explicitly equate him to Horseface, and you could go through in further detail all the torments that there are in hell with river of blood and the mountain of knives, and I'm sure there's other torments that aren't even shown. But they don't. Absolutely. They just rely on, hey, this is a thing that people might kind of pick up on, and it's a funny little joke. It's almost like one of those jokes too. Like, I wonder how much. I'd be curious, I guess. Is that a joke? Is that a play that kids would pick up on? Or is that one of those jokes that's more for the parents?
That's a good question.
I'd be curious to know that. Like, is that like, oh, kids would get this because kids are more steeped in this mythology and fantasy and spiritualism, and so the kids will pick up on this? Or is it like, hey, let's give something to the parents so that the parents think that there's like something deeper here?
Or maybe it's both. I know, what a cop-out answer. But like, I see where you're going with it. I think that we're just not the right people for that kind of discussion because like we didn't grow up in that kind of culture.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. It's just something to think about.
Oh, absolutely, and it's an excellent question.
So maybe out there,
maybe one of our listeners out there might be able to clue us in.
Probably not. Our listeners are idiots.
We're gonna edit that part out, right?
But so yes,
the views expressed in this podcast by Jelly are not held by me. Just putting that out there.
But so yes, we're still in some filler. We're still in some Snake Way filler. I do really like this batch of it, though.
Yeah, these 5 were pretty good. The next 5 might be a little bit less entertaining, in my opinion, but we'll worry about that next week when we talk about that. So
yeah, so that's Snake Way. It's just like Corrin's Tower in that it is part of the training itself, right? Running 1,000,000 miles is part of the training. Mm-hmm. But once you've done it once, you don't need to show the next and the next and the next and the next time that it's done.
Yeah.
From here on, we'll see glimpses of Snake Way, but you'll never see full episodes dedicated to someone running down Snake Way again.
Yeah, it's mostly just like quick cuts to Goku like doing something silly.
Or you see it as like as they pan across Snake Way and take you to King Kai's planet as like an establishing shot.
Yeah.
Things like that. You'll see Snake Way again, but it's never... You see Corrin's Tower again, but it's never important unto itself again. Mm-hmm. Snake Way, much the same.
Hey, I'm getting kind of tired. How long have we been walking?
Since we first left the ship? Solidly 9 hours.
We take a break for a bite?
I suppose we can, but that's not a very exciting ending for our listeners.
I mean, we can't control that. This is just how things shook out.
We gotta provide some kind of tease for our next episode, though.
No, we don't. We don't owe them anything. Wait a minute. Hey, did you bring the supplies?
I thought you did.
You mean we have to go back to the ship? We have no food and no water, and we need to head 9 hours back the way we came?
There you go.
What are you talking about?
Will we make it back to our ship before we succumb to dehydration? Will we fall into a crushing gravity well in exhausted delirium? Find out next time and help us achieve our final forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kid. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.